Good afternoon and welcome to Saturday Sesh. My name is Trey Reckling and I have the pleasure of running and founding the Academy of Cannabis Science here in Seattle, Washington. We've been in operation since 2015. We were fortunate enough to be the first program approved by the Department of Health and the first program to also be partnered with, at the same time, be partnered with an accredited university. So we're very happy to have been doing this work for that time and have a lot of smart friends in the industry. And today we would like to introduce you to several of them. Today we're going to be talking about retail cannabis, behind the counter. So not great secrets maybe. We're not asking anybody to share shop secrets, but we do want to give our students a good view of what it's like to work in retail, because sometimes people have make assumptions, have an illusion of what that work is like, and don't realize it's hard work. It's real work. And so we want to give you a kind of a reality check today, and give you a little view of what that experience is. Of course, everybody who's working in the industry is going to have a slightly different perspective too. So we're fortunate enough to have four guests on today to talk about their individual experience, and I will invite them on as I see them left to right, starting with Hannah Pohl. Hannah, do you mind introducing yourself and tell us a little bit about you?
Sure. My name is Hannah Pohl, and I started out in this industry about 8, 9 years ago, and I started on the production and growing side here in Washington State, and it's been really fun getting to know both sides, and I ended up finding my passion working with consumers and working with people who want to work in our industry. So I quickly made it to the retail side, and I eventually took a management position with Joint Rivers when we opened 5 years ago, and that's where I've been ever since. And I really have found my favorite place, hiring newcomers to the industry and strengthening those who are in it.
And those of you who have not been to Joint Rivers, I believe it was the first ground up build of a cannabis store in Washington State. They also have a double drive-through. It's affiliated with owned by the Muckleshoot tribe right in Auburn, and it's beautiful. If you haven't had a chance to see it, not only is it beautiful, but the customer service is exceptional. I gotta say, Hannah, you all do a really good job to receive and kind of guide and educate people through the store. That's not always the norm, and it's really welcome. So thanks for being here, and we look forward to talking to you.
Thank you so much.
And so we've got folks from all over Washington today. Our next person is Cody Funderburk. Cody, we have an opportunity, or we've had the opportunity to know you for a little while. Tell us about you and your industry experience.
Yeah, absolutely. So I got started, I've worked in cannabis retail for about 5.5 years. I started cannabis retail after graduating from the Evergreen State College. I was a business student there, trying to find my niche within the field of business. And coincidentally, my senior year of college, they introduced a brand new program called the Business of Cannabis: Opportunities and Risks in an Emerging Market. So that was naturally my choice. And after finishing that program, I started working cannabis retail in Seattle. I became state licensed as a medical cannabis consultant after completing the Academy of Science program at Seattle Central College. And then I worked as a ship's lead medical cannabis consultant. I wrote articles and columns for my store for about 5.5 years. I currently am a graduate student at the University of Maryland School of Pharmacy, where I'm studying medical cannabis science and therapeutics. I currently don't work in cannabis retail. I actually work in a healthcare setting at an HIV palliative care facility. But I am considering kind of pivoting and retransitioning back into the retail cannabis space. So I'm really glad to be here. Thank you, Trey, for having me.
Absolutely. And yes, although you're not actively working in retail, I know about your experience, and I know that you're actively working on your cannabis IQ, as we say, on the additional program. So you're a perfect fit to be with us today. Claire, I would like to introduce you or ask you to introduce yourself next, if you don't mind.
Sure. So I'm Claire Capriola,
And let
and
me,
I am
could I,
a
could I
pharmacist.
Could I
Actually
interrupt
been a
real quickly?
pharmacist for about 39 years. And I've been in cannabis with Lana pretty much the last 8 years. And I'm full-time clinical pharmacist for Jamestown Family Health Clinic here in Sequim, which serves over 18,000 patients. And so as a clinical pharmacist, I work with another pharmacist. We manage anticoagulation, we do medication reviews, and we serve the 28 providers that are there at the clinic. So full-time, and then I have a side gig. My side gig is cannabis. And I've been studying cannabis probably the last 8, 9 years. And I have a really cool gig, side gig, where I go in to our dispensary here, the Jamestown Slalom Tribes Cannabis Dispensary. And I'm able to go in every other Friday. And I sit down with clients and we basically educate patients on how to use cannabis medically safely. So I'll do drug cannabis interactions. Usually it's just like you're sitting down with a pharmacist to review medications. And then we help educate clients to make better choices to help reduce harm and risk. So it's been really a great collaboration. Lana, we have a lot of other stuff going on at Cedar Greens. We've got great bud tenders. General manager is very involved with medical cannabis, and it's really exciting. Don't you think, Lana?
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Telling you.
And Claire, let me tell you, I think we were picking you up on 2 different mics. I don't know if you have an external attached too, but I think we're hearing you on both of them, just so you know. It's a little echoey.
Okay.
And we don't see you. I saw you before on camera.
Oh, do you see
There
me
you
now?
go. Oh yeah, and the sound got
Yeah,
better
okay.
too. I
Okay.
think so. So welcome and thank you very much. Yeah, likewise, I've had a very positive shopping experiences at Cedar Greens. It's not in my neighborhood, but when I come up and see Lana, that's part of my journey when I'm in that part of the country, that part of the state, right? So
Mhm.
thank you very much for being here. And your situation is a very unique one. I don't know many, if any, other active pharmacists doing what. Do you know of any other active pharmacists also serving in the retail role?
Yeah, not in this state. So
She's
in
a
other
rock star.
states,
Hearing this now.
uh,
So I'm gonna,
yeah.
I
Sorry
said, I'm
about
gonna
that
record
feedback.
it.
I'm not.
This is it, right?
I'm picking up somebody's
Yeah,
background
I'm not sure
noise.
about the feedback. Sorry.
Yeah, that's all right. No, but it's
Sorry
it's
about the
just
feedback.
no, it's very unique, and so glad to have you on. Thank you very much.
I did
Wow.
Anybody tell where that audio is coming from?
Can you hear me?
I
Yeah,
can
no,
hear.
it was
It's Christopher.
Oh, it is Christopher.
right next to each other, like I was saying. So
Christopher, there we go.
that little wheelie thing for the
My
speakers.
hey, Christopher. I'm picking up. There we go. Got it. And last but not least, Lewis, sorry, I know you had a little challenge getting on this morning. We welcome you. And we're just taking a chance or taking an opportunity for all of our guest speakers to introduce themselves, and I'll ask you to do the same next.
You okay?
Try again?
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, great, thanks.
So my name is Lewis. I'm originally from Atlanta. I did moved out to Washington maybe about 8, 9 years ago to work in the marijuana industry. There we go. I love the industry. I went to school to be a psychiatrist, but realized I wanted to help people and found that this is a lot more helpful. I did have my mother, she did actually have breast cancer at one point, and down south it's not legal to actually take anything cannabis, but when I seen her actually take something that had cannabis in it, it actually made her feel better. So I seen that this is the route I want to go. So I moved out here, got into the industry. It took me about 4 or 5 years, finally got into the industry. I work in Ike's White Center location, been there about 2.5, 3 years. Love what I do. I love coaching. I love dealing with everybody. I love even talking with everybody. It's just a real fun industry. And I think with the correct people, we can make it a big industry.
No, and I will also say that your passion really shines through, because Lewis is one of my bud tenders, And the experience, you make it very pleasant. You certainly share your love for the plant and its medicinal or its potential benefits. And then we get to also compare notes, both being from Georgia, about how this is just worlds apart from our previous experience on the East Coast. Sometimes living in this bubble, you don't appreciate how good you got it. So thank you for being here. Thank you all for being here. So what I'd like to ask you first, and what a lot of our students ask me, is they're like, look, I'm from another industry. I've got retail experience working in a variety of backgrounds, or I've worked in an office. I've done this and done that, but they don't know about getting into the industry besides getting cannabis education or taking some courses with us. They're often asking what sort of transferable skills are important that I need to bring to the table or learn quickly when I go into retail cannabis. So let me ask you all that. What are some skills that you brought to your position that have helped you to be better at your retail cannabis or when you work retail cannabis? Lewis, I'm having a hard time hearing you though. Yeah, I can't hear you for some reason there, Lewis. We had you a second ago. I'm gonna come back. I'm gonna let you tweak it a little bit. I'm gonna come back to you in just a second. Anybody else? Hannah, Cody, Killaire?
Well, I really think that if you want to work in the retail cannabis industry, you have to be more of one of those extroverted people, willing to work with the public, willing to spread your own knowledge. And it's kind of an important factor if you want to work in the retail industry.
And how what kind of transition was that like for you when you started the work?
It was hard because I was really comfortable being in the grows and working with the plants. But it's also really important to connect directly with the consumers, and especially if there's a need for dropping of stigmas and things like that. It's good to get your hands in and really try to connect with the community and with the consumers and really give it a different light.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Claire, Cody, or Lewis, if you got it worked out.
I think, can you hear me? I think I have it.
Yes.
I'm on my phone, so it's much
Okay.
better. I think, having an opportunity to share information to individuals, especially people that have not used cannabis, is really important. I think education is first and foremost. I'll see some clients that have had bad experiences trying cannabis for medical or recreation, and it really, unfortunately, gives it a bad rap. I think if patients know more about or clients know more about cannabis and what to expect, I think it could be a more pleasant experience. And what I'm seeing in medical cannabis is mind blowing. So there are so many clients that come in that are on pharmaceuticals that would prefer not to be or unable to be on pharmaceuticals because of side effects.
Mhm.
So I think this is so important, and it's something that I think education is what we owe everyone coming into the cannabis dispensaries.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm one of those people. I was on a handful of medications for a back injury and re-injury, and I don't take any of that stuff anymore thanks to cannabis. So,
Right.
absolutely, it's life-changing.
Yes.
Lewis, you want to give it a go?
Can you hear me now? Is that better?
It's a little muted, but we can hear you.
Okay, sorry about that. So I was just gonna say, it's been in the customer service side for like 25 years. The main thing I see, like everyone's said, you want to make sure that you educate people, and that's why I love what you're doing, Trey. But also, just treat people how you want to be treated. When people come in, everybody's trying to get high for them. They're trying to get high for medicinal sometimes. So with that being said, you just got to treat everybody different and just treat them like a golden rule. Treat them how you want to be treated.
Very good. And your sound quality got a lot better. Thank you. Yeah, right. Individualized attention, right? this is not a cookie cutter experience, and what has worked for the we can't assume what worked for the last 6 visitors is going to work for the next one, right? And everybody's knowledge and comprehension about what this plant can do is different. Cody, what was it that inspired you through your recreational experience to say, hey, I want to dive deeper into this? Not only that, but I'm going to go back to school and get a degree in this.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, it was the education aspect of things because I didn't have any industry experience before going into retail cannabis. It was really just the educational background and the experience as a retail consumer. I was going to echo off of what Hannah said. I completely agree with the soft skills of extroversion being useful throughout the cannabis retail space. I think it's important to remember that within cannabis retail, there are a bunch of different kinds of positions. So if you want to do marketing, operations, management, customer service, those are all going to imply different transferable skills. But extroversion is, of course, useful throughout. The 3 technical, like hard skills that I would really break it down to is, of course, knowledge of cannabis. That is fundamental. Second is, especially if you're doing more of like marketing or a management side of things, having like a fundamental understanding of business. Retail business within cannabis is pretty similar to retail business within any other sector, with the exception of, it being cash only and things like that. And then the third aspect that I think is really important and often overlooked is an understanding of the regulatory structure of cannabis within your state, because compliance is everything, particularly within cannabis and retail cannabis in particular. It's important to know the laws so that you can remain in compliance.
Absolutely, because if we're not staying open, if we're not keeping our licenses, we can't help anybody.
Those
And
violations
so,
are expensive.
absolutely, and can make you lose your job, right? Lose doing something that you really enjoy, and that can ding not just the individual, but the licensee and everybody around them, right? And so, thanks. Those are really good points. And you also brought up that not everything cannabis retail is bud tenders, and that's what everybody automatically assumes. Well, oh, that's a bud tender position or a medical consultant position. And as you mentioned, there's a lot more to it. There's a lot more specialized skills running the house to make that work. On that note, talk to me a little bit, or pretend you're talking to somebody who wants to get into this job. And I imagine all of you have either worked by somebody for a short period of time for as long as they lasted, or talked to somebody who wanted to get into the industry because it sounds like fun, because it sounds like you can just get high and get free weed to sample, and it's much better than a real job or a job where somebody might have to work hard. Help us dispel that myth right out the door, because I know you all know how hard the work it can be.
It's definitely hard. And honestly, I do a lot of the hiring, and we like to pull from people who have restaurant and food business in their history, because they know the fast-paced lifestyle, and it definitely is a very fast-paced, quick turnover. You only have about 10 minutes with each customer. And yeah, it's really important to have a quick acting crew.
For sure. Yeah, thanks for putting that point to it, because sometimes we have really small opportunities to help somebody understand the importance of dose, set and setting, appropriate product, all that kind of stuff, or even helping challenge their thinking a little bit, because some people come in and they're just shopping from this much of the store, right? And you're like, but we've got
Right.
all these other products you might want to consider. And we've got, like you said, sometimes 10 minutes, sometimes less to have
Right.
these conversations.
Yeah.
What else would you all tell somebody who's coming in? Because occasionally we'll hear from somebody, they're like, oh, it sounds cool. I like weed. I'll go get that job.
Patient and just try listening to people, because I mean, sometimes you come in just like Hannah was saying, people pull from people that deal with customers all the time, because you gotta know how to deal with customers. But any customer comes in front of you, don't take it personal. They just might need their product, right? So you can just help them out. You know what I'm saying? Just be patient.
Yeah, for sure. And because some people think they know it all. Some people know a fair amount, but don't know what they don't know. And as you all know, I imagine every day you have somebody coming in who does this. Uh, this is legal, right? And is still kind of intimidated by this brave new world of legal cannabis. And so sometimes you got to do a lot of hand holding and they might not even buy anything the first time. I imagine you all have had somebody who just wants to do a walkthrough and get a feel for the place. So thanks for that, because I think it's real important. Some people really do underestimate the type of work you all do, and we want to, help give them a head check and not discourage them, but also help them understand that this is a real job with real work ethic required. What How has your understanding of the plant changed since the period before you started working cannabis retail? Talk to us a little bit about maybe how you understand the plant differently, or how you speak about the plant or the product that's different than you would have on day one.
That's a big question.
That is a big question. So
Yeah.
you might have to just take a small bite of that one, but
Yeah. As pharmacists, of course, cannabis is a federal one. It's illegal. We work with a lot of pharmaceuticals. So I think a lot of pharmacists and healthcare professionals view cannabis as really a shady area, just because we don't have evidence-based information to make recommendations. So I think what would be really cool, and what we're doing at Cedar Greens in Squim, is, fortunately, I work in a clinic, I work with providers. I'm able to educate providers and also help with their patients. So if they have a patient that comes in that says, hey, I want to get off of these opiates, but I'm thinking of transitioning to cannabis, who do I talk to? So it's nice to have the partnership that we can all work in this together, and helping the medical community get a better understanding of what's happening in cannabis. There's so many different studies now, probably over 20,000 studies internationally, that really point to cannabis being effective for chronic pain and neuropathic pain, which is really a big concern with your elderly population and baby boomers. So you're going to have a lot of people coming in, clients coming in and wanting to know about medical cannabis. And we have to have medical cannabis consultants in the shops. We have to be able to give good information to these new clients coming into the stores. And I think it helps everybody in a family, including if you work in a cannabis dispensary, you're going to see some things, you're going to talk to clients, and you're going to go, wow, my grandmother could really use that. Or my mom could really use that, or my brother or sister. So, I mean, I think that's kind of how this starts. And I think we have to have a better partnership between the medical community and our dispensaries. So I think that's kind of the direction we're moving here in Squim, which is awesome.
Totally agree, because I mean, there's so many physicians who went to med school, and there was not one day of their med school experience that someone mentioned the endocannabinoid system.
Correct.
And
correct.
so imagine going to a doctor who says, oh, I'm sorry, I can't talk to you anything about circulation. I didn't get anything about the circulatory system in med school.
Right.
What? Right? You would probably second guess or think twice about who you're going to for medical advice. You're like, well, who would know about the circulatory system? And since most of you on the call here have the option to see physicians who do know about the endocannabinoid system, we encourage you and your customers to keep that in mind, because you might not be going, it's like going to a mechanic that doesn't fully understand the engine, right? So
Right.
that's
And
really important.
another thing that I see too is we have cancer patients coming in to the dispensaries to get flour. Well, are we using flour that's DOH approved? Flour that's been tested for mycotoxins, heavy metals, fungus, mold. We need to make sure that we're very cognizant or aware of these recommendations, especially if it's a medical client, and making sure they get to a medical cannabis consultant.
Absolutely. And shout outs to those of you who are working for or shop with stores that are medically endorsed, because not all retail stores in Washington are required to be. And some stores just look at it as a return on investment. They're like, well, the folks on the books for medical are a small percentage of the overall cannabis using community, and so we'll just let them shop with the retail customers. So those of you who are working for shops who are taking this extra step to make sure consultants are on duty, Lord bless you, and thank you on behalf of so many patients that really need that specialized instruction.
And I believe this helps us move forward with legalization with cannabis too. So just another thought.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, let's not forget that Lewis and I know well there are many states out there who are watching to see if this fails or not, or watching to see does it. I thought coming in when I moved here at first, I was like, are the areas around the shops going to be blighted, or are we going to see just really high people sitting on the curb outside? And I imagined all of the things that could go wrong, and it's not like that at all, because some liquor stores can have that feel, and depending on how the stores are run, for sure. But you don't see, that's not the environment, that's not what we contributes to a neighborhood. Some people are scared to death of that, and I know some of you are well aware of some of those fears, but we've disproven that. We've shown that this can be done in a very professional way, and those states that aren't online now are getting to see this example. So please do it for them if you don't do it for anybody else. Anything, what has surprised you about working in retail? What did you not see coming, or what's a lesson you're like, I didn't anticipate that, but that was important for me to learn?
Meeting so many
I was
like-minded
in,
people.
oh,
Everybody
sorry.
on the same page.
Lewis, could you try again? I had a hard time hearing that.
I said meeting of the like-minded people, that everybody is on the same page, want to educate and want to make sure that everybody knows the positives instead of the negatives. That was a nice surprise.
Absolutely. Yeah, the networking is not just undercover now, right? We can be open about our love for the plant and share knowledge. That hive intelligence is critical, right? Not too many years ago, people were hot knife and hash with, two hot knives, or under glass on a pen on a piece of cardboard, right? And nobody was, and also nobody was pressing weed. Nobody was creating dabs, or if they were creating dabs with PVC pipe and butane. We've come a long way in a short amount of time, and that's all to the benefit of those of us who love the plant and want to stay safe. So don't forget what you're learning on the job, because I think those of you working in cannabis know this is like dog years. If you work 3-4 years in cannabis, that's worth a lot more years than in most industries, I think. Anybody else, what surprised you, or what's a lesson maybe you didn't expect to learn?
When I was in college and I was studying cannabis business, it was probably about 2017, 2018. That was the year in which High Times and all these other magazines were talking about the green rush,
Mhm.
how much of an economic boom the cannabis industry was going to be for states that were early to legalization. And I can't say that they were wrong. It's definitely a boom industry. However, the boom is really for the IRS. And less for day-to-day people within the cannabis industry. Whitney Economics just released their second annual State of Cannabis Operator Sentiment and Business Conditions survey report last week, which revealed that only 24.4% of cannabis operators are actually profitable, which is down from 42% the year prior. And the long-term projections were honestly almost just as grim. And that is fundamentally a result of market saturation and subsequent pricing compression that have created a very competitive and hostile industry for operators throughout the cannabis sector, but including cannabis retailers as well. So I don't think I was quite prepared for that. That kind of took me by surprise working in the industry, but I don't think it's as much of the cash grab as people made it out to be in the 2010s.
No, for sure, and please support legal cannabis. A lot of people still have their plug, their person they can go to, and maybe, get around that state tax and get a cheaper deal. But and I understand loyalty, but please support your neighborhood pot shops if you got one, because like Cody mentions, there's something called the 280E tax condition or write-off that's not allowed in cannabis, and it's huge, and it really impacts. I see Ian just came on camera nodding his head and knows everybody working in this field is not crushing it, is not driving sports cars, is not whatever's portrayed on the front of the magazine. A lot of folks are doing this out of passion and knowing, hey, it's going to get better, but we got to get in there and make it get better. It's not going to get better organically. So please support your local licensees, store operations like Chuck's, making sure your scales are appropriate, because if your grams are off, your profits are off. I've had to appreciate all the ancillary businesses also, not just licensees that make this industry work. So please support them as well. Ian, what you got?
Yeah, if I could add one thing, I want to totally echo everything Cody said. It's totally spot on. And the one thing I wish that bud tenders understood more was 280E, because a lot of times they question why owners do what they do or why decisions are made. And it's almost all as a result of 280E and not being able to deduct expenses. We're the only industry in the country that can't deduct payroll. And that drives so much of our decision processes.
And it's really, I mean, for as it was mentioned earlier, cannabis is still Schedule 1, federally prohibited, and we're still treated just that poorly in some, and kind of treated one way by the state, another way by the feds. And I mean, you have the problems with even collecting money from customers. You've got so many, we can't deliver, so many things that stand in the way of doing business as normal. That's goes on behind the scenes that you all might not appreciate, that your stores and other licensees are going to the trouble to make it work.
You mentioned a tribal shop earlier, Joint Rivers.
Yes.
And some of the experiences I've had at tribal shops are so different and so much better just because the structure is completely different in terms of what rules apply and the tax structure.
And
Absolutely. Yeah,
and they're able to do it differently. Hannah, tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, we definitely have benefits being on the tribal land. Our licenses are written differently. We just have benefits from top to bottom, from how we can actually operate our business to the taxes and where that goes, and what kind of outside support that we get as well from our community. And because we're owned by a tribe that has a lot of other businesses and a lot of resources, we have such a good, honestly, like a good business family. So we do have a lot more freedom, and there's a lot of safety net for our vendors as well. And anybody who works with us, they don't have the same kind of fear that they do going, onto other shops. So it definitely, I mean, taxes, I can't really talk about too much, but anything that revenues directly from the store goes right into our community and gets directly put into tribal projects. So it's really nice to see that direct correlation of our business and how it supports our tribe.
I really like the tribal model, and I really wish some states would have at least a portion of the licenses that go to communities,
Right.
based on that model where the money does stay in the local community. Some licensees choose and make that happen on their own, but something, and also talking about doing the business differently. If you're not in Washington State, you might not realize I can't sell licensed cannabis and a t-shirt in the same shop. Right now, the tribes can do it, and tribes can have a drive-through and do some cool creative things that seem like business as normal. And thank you for doing it, because you're showing, hey, look, and the world didn't end, and
Right.
things didn't catch on fire, and we're just selling a t-shirt, right?
Exactly. I hear some really good news about consumption and things like that coming up for some of our tribal brothers and sisters out there. So I hear, good things are in the works for especially tribal shops. So we're really, really excited to see what's going to come down the line.
And on that note, if you have a shop or work in a shop and you have these cool free magazines, Northwest Leaf, different magazines that come out, You might not know there's a magazine called THC. It's Tribal Hemp and Cannabis. So if you're interested, these are free. And but Tribal Hemp and Cannabis, we always try to give a shout out. It's native owned and operated, and has a really cool focus. So if you're in an area where, or you're in a store and you don't have one of those, be happy to connect you with their editor and their distribution team. Let me talk a little bit about values, because we are always preaching up. Oh, before I ask that, Brian's been very patient. Brian had a question. I'm sorry, man.
Oh, that's okay. I appreciate getting in all the information. I really just had a question for anybody in the retail portion of cannabis. Is obviously, I mean, we all walk away and we all know whatever it is that we know. You know, and in my day, we just smoked what we smoked because, you know, we had 3 or 4 choices if you were lucky to choose from, and you got what you got, and that's what it was. But now there's all this information and so much science and I think it's absolutely wonderful. My question is how do you walk into your first day on the job and not think, oh my God, I don't know what the hell I'm talking about here, you know, because of there being so much information and handling a customer's special request, and you know, you don't know. So how do you handle all that?
That's a great question. I think it's going to be, I think we're talking education here, but maybe talk to us about some of the things your stores are doing or have done to prepare people before that first day on the floor.
Well, from day one, what we've done at Joint Rivers is we've got a 2-week minimum training process, and we've got literature that goes along with it, as well as classes and our direct training as well. And it's really to prepare people just for those kinds of cases. We try to put every scenario out there, even before they're you know, interacting with customers, that they do have a good chance to memorize as much as they can. But we definitely do have a really long training process just to try to combat that. There's a lot of fears going into the starting into the retail business, and people say it just like you did. You know, they don't know what the customer is going to throw at them. They don't know how they're going to be able to respond, and we really try to prepare people. And then we also make sure that our employees are very comfortable just asking, and even standing with somebody while another more experienced bud tender or somebody else explains. And it's always a learning process. We never ever want our employees to feel like they're rushed during that learning process either. And customers are so understanding, especially ones that are there to buy cannabis. They're very understanding of our learning process. That's what I've found in my history.
And I got to give a shout out to you all. Not only do they do that, but before the store ever opened 5 years ago, they worked with us, with Seattle Central and the Muckleshoot Tribal College, and we did 6 weeks of education for the community before the store ever opened its doors. So they had people come into a class once a week, and we talked about this. And these were people, it was free and open to the community, so they could get excited, so they can get knowledgeable and become smarter shoppers before they even had their first shopper. I don't know any other group that's done that. Likewise, I know Ike's is doing, Uncle Ike's does series of educational program. Well, you all do a lot in-store education. Either Ian or Lewis want to talk a little bit about the work that you all do to educate folks in the shop?
I want us to be more like Hannah. That was pretty impressive.
I agree.
Thank you.
Lewis, what are some of those things you do to help a new bud tender that might be working alongside of you?
like I said, a lot of side by side with some of our veteran actual bud tenders, and just try to make it a community thing. I always mention to them, I always let them know if you have any questions, please feel free to ask. We all know a lot about a little bit of everything, so we can all share the information to you. You know what I mean? So, like Hannah said, just try to make them feel comfortable. We do actually have like a little book area where you can actually pick up some books and read about the actual cannabis plant and everything. So yeah, it's pretty much just a lot like Ian said, it kind of has a lot of good points, and we do a lot of some of that similar stuff.
And I know you and I've talked around the hive intelligence idea that, within that collection of people at the shop, that village of knowledge, that you might have one person who really knows and appreciates and enjoys dabs, and one person who's really into old school dry sift or bubble hash, and you've got another person who is really into genetics and the varieties of cultivars or strains and what their lineage is. And so we get to nerd out in our own. Nobody can hold all the knowledge. And so we really encourage you all not to try to be the smartest person in the shop, but try to weave that knowledge together and learn from each other. We can't be so proud that it's a contest to see who's the person with the greatest canna IQ, so to speak, right? We got to approach this as a team.
Correct. And it's always learning there's always something to be learned. I love that.
Absolutely. Well, like tech workers, we're going to have to be lifelong learners in this space. Ian, what you got?
Yeah, we're changing our onboarding education a little bit too right now, trying to do a new program where a new bud tender would spend a few days in different departments like inventory, mainly inventory. So the bud tender is not just bud tending, they understand the back of house process as well, which would make them more of a better understanding of the whole operation. Because the cannabis stores are somewhat like they're like a grocery store a little bit, but because every harvest is different, there's constant inventory issues of making sure that the stocking is done correctly, the menus are correct, because so much of our sales come from online orders that they come in to pick up. And we're trying to get a better, well-rounded staff feeling, I guess, where everybody kind of appreciates what everybody else does a little bit more, I guess.
Oh, and that's great, because when you don't have that, you have a lot of assumptions and misinformation going on in the store. And you all know we have customers that really get attached to a certain cultivar. They're like, oh, I really like banana animal face or whatever the crazy name is for the cultivar. And maybe the grower didn't grow that the next round, or they're cycling out. And so then the person comes in and like, but I found that was my sweet spot. That's what I've been looking for. And so we have to help them find something in the family, what's something with a similar cannabinoid and terpene profile that's, maybe related by genetically or just as a chemovar sort of thing. Chuck, what you got? Did you have your hand up? Maybe not.
I did. It just took me a minute to unmute.
Okay.
Before I ask my question, I want to give you the opportunity. You were going to speak to values.
That's what I was getting ready to ask. I was going to ask, if you want to go ahead with your question, I'll follow up. I'll have that as my last question to our panel.
Thank you. So to retailers and bud tenders, what percentage of people you deal with are mean and jerks and not happy cannabis people? And when those people come in your store, is there a general philosophy on how you deal with it? This is my biggest concern out of all the potential concern, not to mention getting shot, although that's coming down. But I just don't want to face off with some jerk because I happen to be standing in a retail store. So how's that handled?
No, good question, because regardless of what kind of retail experience you have, we're going to have some customers who are frustrated. Some are trauma affected, right? Some people, their behavior is not lined up, because we have a whole community of folks have experienced trauma thanks to an unjust war on drugs, right? And so we know that. And so some people's behavior doesn't even match the situation. We got to remember, hey, that we've all been affected in one way or another, and some entire communities for generations, right, that have been targeted. So we want to keep that in mind. But what do you all do when you get behavior that you're like, that wish that person didn't come in with that attitude today?
Well, to speak directly about, a percentage of people, I would say it's close to, maybe 5%. A very low amount of people come in that cross a line. And we can always, help somebody who's in a bad mood, and that's not crossing the line for most of us. But that's why we do go through a good amount of training as well, because we do meet up with a lot of people who are having bad days and they don't cross the line, but we help them even though they're having that bad day. But if there's certain lines crossed, and we identify them with our employees, swearing, yelling, any kind of violence, or things that affect tribal issues, race issues, things like that, things that cross the line, that are very specific. We do immediately ask them to leave, but we don't ban them. We say we can help you at another time. And we have specific language that we use as well. And if the bud tender isn't able to communicate that to themselves, we've got management always on board, headsetted, with everybody, so that we can get there as soon as possible to speak as calmly as I am and just explain, we can't help you right now, but come back in an hour even, and we'll help you out. We just need to restart. And but if lines are crossed, we absolutely call the police ASAP. And us specifically, we have a really, really good relationship with the Auburn Police Department. The tribe actually pays a good amount of money annually to the Auburn Police Department, which employs a good extra number of policemen. So we get quick responses, we get direct responses. They're there in a quick and a hurry, as well as we've got on-site security. We've got bingo hall security, which is 24 hours as well. And they're patrolling our parking lot, because we're directly in their parking lot. So I think we specifically might be a little bit different, where maybe we just haven't gotten a lot of extra negative attention, because we can get people there quick and in a hurry and deal with things fast. Speaking about our neighbors, though, there's 3 other shops in Auburn. There's Stash Box, there's an Evergreen Market, and there's a Lucid. Each of those shops have been robbed, have been ran into by cars. They are maybe at a little bit more of a risk, but I don't know exactly what those risks are, besides the protection that we have really does set us apart. So I'm not sure what maybe those guys are doing, but I know what we are doing really does protect us.
And not, if you haven't been to Joint River Store, they also place 2 3-ton boulders right in front of the store that you walk between, that fits into the whole river theme. And nobody's running a car through those boulders. It's a beautiful design touch that it's kind of undercover. Like, you don't realize the additional security that brings. But
yeah,
anybody else about dealing with difficult situations?
That goes back to 280E. In 2022, we were in the red pretty much the whole year because of security costs. If we could deduct those costs like a tribal operation, it changes everything.
Yeah,
right.
And kudos to Ikes, who put in those lockable, what do you call the catch door, the secondary
Buzzers,
security? Yeah, secondary security door. So if
Good,
somebody were to come in and rob the store, you can effectively catch them between the doors, or keep them from coming in the store. So some stores have really gone to an extra expense, not just to protect their employees, but the general public. And we thank you.
One more note, we did have such a privilege of building our own store from the ground up, and we did it specifically to withstand car impacts. So we definitely did. We're able to take extra steps even before opening, and so I mean, that's just us specifically. That's not a model of every single shop,
Right.
but tribal shops specifically, they have a little bit of extra protection.
And I apologize, we're over. I do want to ask you to answer very briefly, but tell me a value that you believe your store where you work or have worked exemplifies that helps you stand by that store. Like, is there a value that you feel like you all work and operate on that just makes you feel good about your brand?
Yeah, me personally, that
Hmm.
we are for the people, you know what I mean? That we're
Hmm.
trying to take care of the community and take care of everybody. So that's one thing I do like about my store. I mean, we even have a program sometimes when we go out and we actually pick up trash and stuff around in the community just to make sure that they understand that we're all in this together.
Great, thank you. Great example.
Yeah, at Cedar Greens, we've had a medical cannabis focus since we opened, just over 3 years. We're now partnering with Quable Natural Healing Clinic, which is out of the Puyallup tribe.
Hmm.
Have a naturopathic provider come down, is in a building right behind us at Cedar Greens, and they're offering naturopathic cannabis card authorization. Uh, it's an amazing collaboration. We're going to be hopefully doing research with Washington State University, with the Puyallup tribe. We have a consultation room where myself and we also have an RN on staff that sits down with clients to help educate and direct patients or clients that have not used cannabis before. Um, Education is just way up there for us. We have 5 medical cannabis consultants on staff. We're rocking it and I love it. We have a great partnership with the clinic I work at, and hopefully we'll be able to uh, get in touch with the cancer care center in our community. So I think Lana Kerr, fantastic. She's the best.
Agreed.
And man, without her, boy, we wouldn't be where we are today. So I'm really happy to be there and privileged, and we're moving forward. So it's exciting.
Thank you. Cody, let me ask you. I know you said you're not actively working in retail, but talk to us about a value that's important to you. If you should return or maybe something that you experienced before.
Yeah, so for me, that's going to be a commitment to real diversity and inclusion within the industry based upon a genuine understanding of the history of cannabis, particularly as it's situated within US history. So an understanding of the importance of empowering demographics disproportionately impacted by mass incarceration throughout the century-long war on cannabis, and understanding that the medical cannabis industry itself, which gave rise to the recreational industry, was born from the struggles of the gay community during the HIV and AIDS epidemic, recognizing the activism of leaders such as Dennis Peron, who fought a lifelong battle for the legislative changes that eventually allowed for any cannabis retail dispensary to open its doors in the first place. A commitment to enhancing and uplifting and sustaining marginalized communities to correct the harmful legacy of the war on drugs.
Boy, there's a lot in that answer, and thank you. And we try not to have any of these meetings without forgetting to mention that there are over 50,000 incarcerated people in this country for nonviolent cannabis offenses. And those are predominantly people of color, because as Cody mentioned, the arrest rates are not equal. There's not equality in this country when it comes to how there is in the way people use cannabis. Cannabis is the most diverse community of the cannabis use community is the most diverse you can belong to, but the arrest rates are certainly not level and certainly continue to impact marginalized, targeted minority communities. So let's not forget that the fight is not over with legal cannabis, with cannabis being state legal. And Tenure, I'm sorry we are at time and I've already kept people long, so I'm not going to call on you. You're welcome to hang back, and I'm happy to chat with you. Thank you so much for our guests for being here today, for taking out of your time. Sorry that we ran late. We want to encourage everybody on the line. If you're not already following us on YouTube, we have dozens and dozens of hours of meetings like this and shorter format content that's all free. So if you want to nerd out, improve your Canna IQ, please do that. As we mentioned before, we have a brand new class it's our first in a series on psychedelic medicine. So it's Psychedelic Medicine 101. This chapter is on psilocybin. And if you're in King County, we are now decrimmed to grow, use, and possess natural medicine, herbal plant medicine. And that's a cubensis. Aren't they beautiful? And so we're teaching people to grow these as well. Still somewhat of a risk, but nothing like we've had before. And we're willing to operate in that gray zone because we think it's real important, because we know the health benefits are certainly there for some folks, and there's a lot of promise. Thank you so much for being here with us today. Give me a few days and we'll get this up on YouTube as well. Thanks again to our guests, and I'll hang back if anybody wants to chat or have any questions, but thank you so much for spending your Saturday afternoon with us, and we hope to see you back.